My future daughter-in-law told me she was pregnant, but it wasn't my son's child. When she said those words, I remember the air around us turning still. The kettle on the stove had just started to whistle, and yet, for a moment, I couldn't hear a thing. Only the pulse in my ears, loud and frantic, as if my heart wanted to crawl right out of my chest. I thought I'd misheard her. I wanted to believe I had. But the look in her eyes, that calm, guilty, almost defiant stare, told me she meant every word. If you've ever had the ground pulled out from under you, you'll know the feeling. It's not sudden, like falling. It's slow, like the floor melting beneath your feet while you're still trying to smile and pretend everything's fine. Before that afternoon, I thought my life was finally finding peace again. My name is Marjorie, though most people just call me Mama Joe. I'm 56, a widow for 7 years now. My husband, Calvin, passed away suddenly from a heart attack on a chilly March morning. One moment, he was humming along to the radio, sipping his coffee. The next, his cup shattered on the floor. Losing him broke something in me, but I poured everything I had left into our son Daniel. He was only 24 then, just starting his job as a civil engineer. Quiet and responsible, always more like his father than me. Our house sits on the edge of town, with a front porch that faces the lake. Every evening I'd sit there with my tea, waiting for Daniel's car lights to turn up the drive. He never missed a dinner, not even after he started dating. That's how I first heard her name, Tessa. At first he mentioned her in passing. Mom, this girl at work made everyone cupcakes. Or, Tessa says I should try yoga. Apparently, I'm too tense. I'd laugh, teasing him about this mysterious woman who suddenly had so many opinions about his stress levels. Then one night, he brought her home. I still remember the smell of that evening. Roasted chicken and rosemary, the faint trace of rain from her umbrella leaning by the door. She walked in wearing a soft blue dress, hair tucked neatly behind her ears, and a nervous smile that made her look younger than she was. "Mrs. Cole," she said, offering her hand, "it's so nice to finally meet you." "Call me Mama Joe," I told her, and meant it. From that night on, Tessa became a fixture in our lives. Sunday dinners, holiday lunches, even random Tuesday nights, she'd show up with pie or fresh bread, always eager to help, always polite. She had a way of looking at Daniel that softened him, and I admit I liked her for that. After years of quiet evenings, seeing my son's laughter echo through the house again was healing. When he told me he planned to propose, I hugged him so tight I could feel his heart beating against my cheek. "She's the one, Mom," he said, eyes glowing. "She makes me feel steady." I believed him. The engagement dinner was small. Just the 3 of us at home, the table set with my mother's lace cloth. I'd even opened the bottle of wine Calvin had saved for Daniel's graduation. Everything about that night felt right. The laughter, the easy conversation, the way she rested her head on his shoulder when I brought out dessert. I remember thinking, maybe life really can begin again. But as I cleared the plates, I caught a moment between them, a flicker of tension, something unsaid. Tessa had looked at Daniel a second too long, her smile faltering, before she quickly turned to me. At the time, I brushed it off. Nerves, maybe. Wedding planning could do that to anyone. I didn't know then that that was the first crack. Small, invisible, but deep enough to split everything later. The first clue: suspicion. A few weeks later, Daniel went on a work trip to Chicago. He'd be gone for 5 days, his first long trip since they'd gotten engaged. I remember teasing Tessa about missing him too much. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I'll keep busy," she said lightly. "Maybe I'll stop by for tea with you, Mama Jo." And she did. The next afternoon, she came over with lemon cake and that same polite smile. We chatted about wedding colors, guest lists, and venues, but something about her seemed distracted. She fiddled with her ring, barely touched her cake, and once, when my phone rang, she flinched at the sound. Then, as she stood to leave, she swayed slightly, gripping the edge of the table. "You all right, dear?" I asked. "Just dizzy," she murmured, forcing a laugh. "Maybe skipped breakfast." I wanted to believe her, but when I hugged her goodbye, she smelled faintly of peppermint and something else, that sharp, metallic tang I couldn't quite place. Later, I realized it was from morning sickness lozenges. A week later, she canceled our next tea abruptly. "Not feeling well," she texted. I didn't think much of it until Daniel came home that Sunday, a worried look clouding his face. "Tessa's been acting strange," he said, sitting heavily on the couch. "Moody, distant. She won't tell me what's wrong." "Maybe she's overwhelmed," I suggested. "You two are planning a wedding." He sighed. "Yeah, maybe." But his voice lacked conviction. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the porch with my tea, staring at the reflection of the moon in the water. My gut churned. I told myself I was just being protective. Mothers always worry. Still, that feeling, that quiet, uneasy whisper, wouldn't leave me. A month later, she asked to meet me alone. We sat in that same kitchen where she'd once laughed and baked cookies. The afternoon light cut across the table in golden stripes. She was pale, her fingers trembling as she held her cup. "Mama Jo," she began softly, "I need to tell you something before Daniel hears it from anyone else." My stomach knotted. Then she said it. "I'm pregnant." I froze, half joy, half in belief. "Oh, Tessa, Daniel's going to be thrilled." But she didn't smile. Her eyes filled instead, tears catching the light. "It's not his." The words hung in the air, heavy, merciless, final. I felt my body go cold, and in that moment, in the silence that followed, I realized everything I thought I knew about her, about them, about the future I'd been dreaming for my son, was gone. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the steam curling from my untouched tea. The clock on the wall ticked so loud it felt like a drumbeat. I finally managed to speak, though my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "What did you just say, Tessa?" She looked down, tears rolling silently onto her trembling hands. "I made a mistake, Mama Jo. A terrible one." I felt my pulse racing, heat rising from my chest to my face. "Does Daniel know?" She shook her head, slowly. "No, not yet. I wanted to tell him after I told you." "Why me first?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Because you'll hate me less," she whispered. "And maybe you'll help me tell him." I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because sometimes the body does strange things when the heart breaks. I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle it, but the sound came anyway, dry, bitter, hollow. "Help you?" I said finally, my voice trembling. "You think I'd help you destroy him?" She flinched. "I never meant for any of this to happen. It was before the proposal. We had a fight. He left for that conference, and I—" She stopped, covering her face. "I was stupid. I thought it was over. I spent one night with someone else. Then Daniel came back, and we made up, and I realized I still loved him. I didn't even know I was pregnant until last week." I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw her out of my house. But I just sat there, gripping the edge of the table, feeling my nails dig into the wood. "Who's the father?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "You know him," I said quietly. She didn't answer. "Tessa?" When she finally spoke, her voice broke. "It's his friend, Mark, from work." I stood up suddenly, my chair scraped against the floor. "The one who was his best man?" She nodded. I turned away, pressing my hand to my chest. The room felt smaller, the air thick. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shallow. "You have to tell him," I said, after a long silence. She looked up, terrified. "He'll never forgive me." "Maybe not," I said. "But lying will make it worse. If he finds out from someone else—" I swallowed hard. "You will destroy him completely." Tessa sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking. I wanted to comfort her. Part of me still saw the girl who had helped me set the table, who called me Mama Joe. But another part of me, the mother, wanted to shield my son from the kind of pain that carves scars you never recover from. When she left, the house felt unbearably quiet. I walked to the living room, picked up the framed photo from their engagement night, the one where they stood under the fairy lights, smiling at each other. I set it face down. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I kept thinking, should I tell Daniel myself? Would that be betrayal or protection? By dawn, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I went to see Tessa. She lived downtown, in a small apartment she shared with a roommate before moving in with Daniel after the wedding. When she opened the door, she looked worse than the day before, eyes swollen, face pale. "You told him?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I couldn't. He called last night, all excited about us going baby shopping next week." Her voice cracked. "How can I destroy that?" I stepped inside. "Tessa, the truth will come out. It always does." She sank onto the couch, covering her face. "Please, give me a few days. I'll tell him when I'm ready." I wanted to argue, but I saw her trembling, broken. So I left. But I didn't trust her to follow through. For the next few days, Daniel was radiant, talking about nursery colors, baby names, plans for the wedding. Watching him made my stomach twist. On the fourth day, I couldn't bear it anymore. He came home from work with a small box in his hand, baby socks. He showed them to me, smiling like a boy again. "Aren't they adorable, Mom?" That smile was what broke me. I couldn't let it continue. "Daniel, we need to talk." He frowned. "What's wrong?" "Sit down, son." He sat, his brow furrowed. "You're scaring me." I hesitated, words choking in my throat. "Tessa came to see me."
His face softened. "She told you. That's good. She wanted to surprise you about the baby, right?" I looked into his eyes, those same warm hazel eyes that mirrored Kelvin's, and I felt tears sting my own eyes. "Daniel, it's not your child." He froze. "What?" "She told me herself. She said it happened before the engagement, but—" I trailed off. "She's been lying to you." He blinked, as if trying to reset the world. No, Mom, you misunderstood her. She wouldn't—" "She named the man, Daniel. Mark." His face went white. "Mark?" I nodded. He stood up abruptly, knocking the box from the table. The tiny socks landed on the floor, soft and innocent. He walked to the window, gripping the frame. His shoulders heaved once, twice. Then he turned to me, eyes blazing. "I need to hear it from her." I didn't try to stop him. He drove straight to her apartment, and though I didn't tell me the details, I found out later what happened. The neighbors heard shouting, glass breaking, a door slamming. That night he came home pale and quiet, a haunted look in his eyes. "She admitted it," he said, his voice low. "She said she didn't know how to tell me, that she wanted to raise the baby as mine." "What did you say?" He swallowed. "I told her the wedding's off, and that I hope she finds whatever peace she's looking for, but it won't be with me." Then he walked to his room and closed the door. I sat alone in the kitchen long after midnight, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the sound of his muffled sobs through the wall, and for the first time in years, I wished my husband were still alive, so I wouldn't have to face our son's heartbreak alone. The next morning, Daniel didn't go to work. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. Just sat on the porch, staring out at the lake, that empty look carved into his face. I brought him coffee, but he barely touched it. After a long silence, he finally said, "You know the worst part, Mom? I still love her." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "Love doesn't die just because it hurts you, son. But it changes. It hardens. And then, if you let it, it heals." He didn't answer, but his hand reached up, covering mine.
I didn't know how it leaked. Maybe a coworker overheard, maybe someone saw the argument. But by midweek, it was everywhere. Small-town gossip moves faster than wildfire. By Thursday morning, a neighbor stopped me at the grocery store, whispering, "I heard about Daniel and that girl. Bless his heart." I forced a polite smile, but inside I felt raw. Every sympathetic look felt like salt on an open wound. I didn't blame them. I knew it wasn't cruelty, just curiosity wrapped in concern. But it made me realize how fast a private heartbreak could turn into a public spectacle. Daniel stayed home for a week. He wouldn't answer his phone. Friends came by, but he barely spoke. His father's old recliner became his refuge. He'd sit there for hours, staring out the window, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. One afternoon, I found him holding his phone, scrolling through old photos. Him and Tessa smiling on picnics, her wearing the engagement ring, that wide, hopeful grin on both their faces. He swiped through them slowly, and then deleted them, one by one. When he reached the last photo, his finger hovered, trembling. Then he set the phone down and whispered, "She's gone for good, isn't she?" I nodded, my throat tight. "She is, son, but that doesn't mean you are." He didn't answer, but that night he finally ate a little dinner. Just soup, but it was something. Tessa, meanwhile, had vanished from town. I later learned she took a transfer to another branch of their firm in Atlanta. Maybe she thought distance could wash away the whispers. But the truth had already spread too far. People were talking, not just about her cheating, but about the pregnancy. Some said she'd tried to trap Daniel. Others claimed Mark was pressuring her. I didn't care for the gossip,
but I knew how it would wound my son further. So when I heard that Mark was still showing up at work, smirking, pretending nothing had happened, I went to see him myself. It wasn't a plan, it was impulse. A mother's instinct, raw and unfiltered. I walked into the lobby that Friday afternoon, my heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my fingertips. He was in the lobby, talking with a client. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "Mama Joe?" he said, cautiously. "I didn't expect—" "You didn't expect me to know," I said, evenly. He cleared his throat, straightening his tie. "Look, whatever Tessa told you, stop." My voice was calm, steady, but each word felt like carved in stone. "You ruined 2 lives because you couldn't keep your boundaries. My son trusted you. You were supposed to stand beside him on his wedding day, not behind his back in her bed." His face flushed, but he didn't deny it. "It was a mistake. We were drunk. Drunk doesn't make babies. Choices do." The receptionist's eyes darted between us, sensing the tension. I kept my composure. I wasn't here to scream. I wanted him to remember this moment. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "You already showed me who you are. I'm here so that when you see my son's face at work, you'll remember exactly what you took from him and what you'll never have again. Respect." Then I turned and left. Outside, the wind was sharp, stinging my cheeks. But for the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I'd finally said what my son couldn't. Back home, Daniel asked where I'd been. "Just running errands," I said, forcing a smile. He didn't press. Maybe he already knew. The following Sunday, he joined me at church for the first time in months. When we walked in, I could feel eyes on us, but no one said a word. During the final hymn, he reached over and took my hand. His grip was strong, steady. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to heal. After the service, Pastor Lewis came over, kind eyes behind his glasses. "Daniel, son, I know things have been rough, but remember, grace is not for the perfect. It's for the broken who want to stand again." Daniel nodded quietly. "I'm trying." A few weeks later, life began to settle. He went back to work, different department, so he didn't have to see Mark. He'd come home tired, but lighter somehow. Then one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the trees, he said softly, "Mom?" She called me. I turned at him sharply. "Tessa?" He nodded. "She had the baby, and?" He said she just wanted me to know, that she's naming him Caleb, said she's sorry for everything. He paused, looking out over the lake. I didn't say much, just told her I hope she and the baby are healthy. "That was kind of you," I said. He smiled faintly. "It wasn't kindness, Mom. It was closure." Something about the way he said it, calm, resolved, made me exhale deeply. The boy who'd been shattered weeks ago had started becoming a man who understood pain without letting it own him. A month later, the baby news still circulated in whispers, but Daniel didn't flinch anymore. When someone mentioned her name at the hardware store, he just nodded politely and changed the subject. One night, as we cleaned up after dinner, he said, "Do you ever think things happen for a reason, Mom?" I looked at him carefully. "I think sometimes they happen to show us what we can survive." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess that's reason enough." That night, he brought out his old guitar, the one he hadn't touched in years. He sat by the fire, strumming quietly, the melody soft and uneven, like his heart learning a new rhythm. And for the first time since all of it began, I allowed myself to cry, not because of sadness, but relief, because sometimes healing doesn't come with grand gestures or apologies. Sometimes it's just the sound of strings and the quiet peace that follows. It was late spring when I saw her again. The town farmer's market had just reopened. The air smelled of ripe peaches and freshly baked bread, and the square was alive with chatter. I was there to buy flowers for the porch when I heard someone say my name. Mrs. Cole?" I turned, and there she was, Tessa. She looked different, thinner, paler, her hair tied back hastily. But what caught my eye wasn't her face. It was the tiny bundle in her arms, wrapped in a pale blue blanket. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The world went muffled, just the sound of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. "I didn't think I'd see you again," I said quietly. She nodded. "I almost didn't come back." The baby stirred, letting out a soft whimper. She rocked him gently, whispering something I couldn't hear. My chest tightened, not out of anger this time, but something heavier. Pity, maybe. "He's beautiful," I said, before I could stop myself. "Thank you." Her voice cracked, the words barely a breath. "His name's Caleb." The name hung between us, familiar now, but strange in her voice. "I wanted to thank you," she continued softly, "for being kind, even when I didn't deserve it. I know what I did, to Daniel, to you. It can't be undone. But I wanted to tell you I'm trying to be better. For him." Her eyes glistened, but there was no manipulation in them this time. Just exhaustion. Regret. "I hope you do," I said gently. "He deserves a mother who's honest." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." I looked at her, this young woman who'd shattered my son's heart, now holding a baby that carried both her guilt and her second chance. For the first time, I saw her not as a villain, but as someone who made a mistake she'd spend her life trying to atone for. "Take care of him," I said softly. "And take care of yourself." She smiled faintly through her tears. "I will." And then she turned and walked away, blending into the market crowd, the blue blanket a small flicker of color among the noise and sun. I stood there for a long time, the scent of lilacs heavy in the air, and thought, maybe this was closure for both of us. Resolution. Healing. That night, I told Daniel. We were having dinner, roast chicken and mashed potatoes, the kind of comfort meal that carries memories more than taste. "She came back to town," I said carefully. He didn't look up from his plate. "I know. Mark's sister mentioned it. She has the baby, a boy." He nodded, expression unreadable. "I figured. She said she's trying to be better." This time, he looked up, meeting my gaze. "Maybe she will be." His tone surprised me. Not cold, not bitter, just calm. "I don't hate her anymore, Mom," he said quietly. "I thought I did, but now I just feel nothing. Maybe that's how you know you've moved on." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "I'm proud of you." He smiled faintly. "I'm starting to be proud of me too." Over the next few months, life found its rhythm again. Daniel threw himself into work, but in a good way this time. He started hiking on weekends, joined a community volunteer group, even took up painting again. The house felt alive in a different way. Quieter, but full of small beginnings. One evening, I came home from the grocery store and found him on the porch, talking to someone. A woman, tall, dark curls, wearing a soft linen dress. They were laughing, easy and light. When he saw me, he waved. "Mom, this is Leia. We met at the volunteer center." Leia smiled warmly. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Cole."
Mama Joe, I corrected automatically, then chuckled. Everyone calls me that. She laughed too, and something in her tone, unforced, kind, put me at ease immediately. That night, as Daniel walked her to her car, I watched from the window. Their silhouettes moved slowly against the fading light. For a brief second, his hand brushed her, and she didn't pull away. It was subtle, but I could see it. The possibility of joy returning. Weeks turned into months. Leia became part of our Sunday dinners, helping me in the kitchen, teasing Daniel when he overseasoned the potatoes. She was gentle, grounded, the kind of woman who carried peace rather than excitement. And I think that's what my son needed most. Peace. One evening, after dinner, Daniel sat beside me on the porch again. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, crickets singing in the distance. He sipped his tea, quiet for a while, then said, "You know, Mom, I think Dad would have liked her." I smiled. "He'd like anyone who made you laugh like that." He nodded. I never thought I'd be able to trust again. But Leia, she doesn't make me forget what happened. She just makes me believe it's okay that it did. I looked at her, his face softened by the glow of the porch light, and thought how grief and love sometimes weave together to make something new, something stronger. A few months later, I got a letter. It was from Tessa. Inside was a photo, her and baby Caleb, smiling in a puck somewhere, bright and green. The letter was short, written in neat, shaky handwriting. "Dear Mama Joe, I wanted you to know we're doing okay. Caleb's healthy and growing fast. I'm working full-time now, taking classes in the evenings. I think about you and Daniel often, not with regret anymore, but with gratitude. Thank you for not turning your back on me completely. I hope one day, if fate allows, you'll meet him. With respect, Tessa." I sat with that letter for a long time, then tucked it into my journal and whispered a quiet prayer for her, and for the little boy who would grow up never knowing how many hearts were broken and healed before he came into the world. Summer faded into autumn. Leaves turned to amber, the air crisp with change. Daniel and Leia announced their engagement that September. The day he told me, I felt tears rush to my eyes, not from surprise, but from the quiet relief that life had come full circle again. "We're not rushing," he said quickly. "We just... know." I smiled through my tears. "Then that's all the reason you need." That night, I sat on the porch alone, the old wind chime whispering softly above me. I thought of Calvin, of the years gone by, of Tessa and that baby somewhere far away. I realized then that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back into your life. Sometimes it means wishing them peace from afar and finally allowing yourself to rest.
The morning of the wedding was bathed in soft gold, the kind of light that makes everything seem gentle, like the world itself was holding its breath for something pure. I stood at the window, watching the breeze sway the white ribbons tied along the garden fence, and thought of how far we'd all come. Daniel looked nervous, pacing the living room in his charcoal suit, tugging at his tie. He wasn't the boy who once fell apart in his childhood room. He was a man now, steadier, humbler, softer. "Do I look all right?" he asked, running a hand through his hair. I smiled. "You look like your father." He chuckled, voice breaking a little. "That's all I ever wanted to hear." We both grew quiet then, the air between us thick with memories of laughter, loss, mistakes, and forgiveness. Daniel said after a moment. Mom, I know I never said it enough, but thank you for standing by me even when I didn't deserve it, for never giving up. I swallowed the lump in my throat. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We hold the pieces until our children are ready to take them back. He smiled, eyes glistening. Well, I'm ready now. And when the music started outside and Leah walked down that aisle, simple lace dress, no veil, her hands steady in his, I felt something deep in my chest unlock. It wasn't just pride, it was peace. After the ceremony, the guests lingered in the yard, laughing under the strings of fairy lights. Leah's mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "You raised a good man." I smiled. He raised himself in the end. At one point during the evening, I stepped away for a moment. The laughter and chatter faded behind me as I walked toward the quiet edge of the garden. The pond reflected the stars and the air was cool with the scent of lavender. And there, in that stillness, I whispered a small prayer, not for what had been lost, but for everything we'd found in its place. Because loss had shaped us, because betrayal had forced truth to the surface, because forgiveness had freed us from carrying the weight of what could never be undone. Months later, I received another letter. It came without warning, tucked neatly into my mailbox, postmarked from a nearby town. It was from Tessa again. This time, the handwriting was steadier. The photo she enclosed showed her at what looked like a small daycare. Children gathered around, Caleb perched on her knee, smiling at something off camera. Her note read, "Dear Mama Joe, I found work helping with children, and it's the first time in years I felt useful. Caleb's in preschool now. He loves painting, just like Daniel used to. I sometimes wonder if they'll ever meet, though maybe it's better they don't. But I still carry the kindness you showed me when you had every reason not to. I wanted to tell you that I'm okay. Truly. Thank you for that day at the market. You didn't say much, but it changed everything. With warmth, Tessa." I sat at my kitchen table, reading her words over and over, tears blurring the ink. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was a woman's quiet acknowledgement of her mistakes and her own healing. I whispered softly, "You're forgiven, Tessa." Even if she'd never hear it, I needed to say it out loud. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't for the other person at all. It's the final gift we give ourselves. Years passed. Daniel and Leah built a life filled with the kind of love that didn't demand perfection. They had their share of disagreements, sure, slammed doors, late-night talks, laughter after tears. But that's real love, the kind you grow into, not the kind that burns bright and dies fast. When their first child was born, a boy with dark hair and big, curious eyes, Daniel called me from the hospital. His voice was shaky, choked with emotion. "Mom, we named him Calvin." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The tears came too quickly. "Dad would be so proud," I finally whispered. "I hope I make him proud too," he said. "You already have." Now, sometimes on quiet evenings, I sit on that same porch where so many memories live, the wind chimes still singing its soft tune. I think about the choices that shape us, the moments that test our faith, and the grace that finds us when we least expect it. Life doesn't always give us neat endings, but it gives us chances to forgive, to rebuild, to love again. And that, I've learned, is enough. The last time I saw Tessa was purely by chance. It was at a small community fair 2 towns over. Caleb must have been 6 by then, running through the grass with a painted butterfly on his cheek. When she noticed me, she froze for a moment, then smiled. A quiet, grateful smile. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. She just waved softly and I waved back. And that was it. The past didn't need to revisiting anymore. It had found its place. That night, when I got home, I watched Daniel playing in the yard with little Calvin, their laughter echoing through the twilight. And I realized something. Every heartbreak, every wrong turn, every sleepless night had led us here. Not to perfect happiness, but to real peace. Because sometimes the stories we live through aren't meant to destroy us. They're meant to make us softer, wiser, and more human.